Dr. Morimi Iwama, who has a very interesting story to tell, and let's go right for it, sir.
Thank you very much. I have to warn you that my talk is not a technical talk as such. It's a talk about how I got myself interested in working on radio and electronics. Perhaps I can claim number one position in this audience. We have a lot of people with distinguished career. But if I say that who is the eldest person in this room, perhaps I can win the prize. I think all of us had some memorable events in our lives which somehow shaped our life, what we did in the rest of our lives. And in my case, there are three events that really determined or shaped what I've done in most of my life. And the first event was running into a little kit called crystal radio. Some of you are aware of crystal radio. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And the second event was I had an uncle living in California. And after the war, he decided that perhaps I can benefit from coming to this country and studying. That was event number 2 that changed my life. And the third one has something to do with this club, and that's the working on Project Telstar. So these 3 events, in effect, shaped my life. And the rest of my career, I've got a lot of careers for 34 years. So I'd like to share some of that with you. And again, it's not a technical talk, so don't look for it. But you can pick something out of my talk that may be of some value to you. But I was born in 1929, that makes me 95, in a small village in Japan, a farming village in Japan. And when I was in 6th grade, the Pacific Wars broke. And that went on for a subsequent 4 years. And the war ended in 1945. Shortly after that time, I received as a present, a kit, electronic kit called the electronic kit that was a crystal radio set. And if you can show the picture to the first one, I took some photos.
Right.
Now, this is not the one that I actually worked on, but this is one from the era of 1955 or so, 55 or so. So the one that I received as a present looks pretty much like this, except that this, of course, is missing headphone. So with headphone and building this kit, I was able to listen to, since then there are only 2 channels in Japan, NHK 1 and NHK 2. And I was really memorized by the fact that sound somehow got carried from far distance place to where I was. And sound got converted to something, then reproduced at my house. That was really amazing. And I thought, this is something I should learn more about. and I started self-studying electronics. And that really changed my life because that led to working on radio and various sound systems, and which gave me enough cash money to buy instruments and buy parts with which I built radio and sold them. And that's how I made out 2 years after the war. Then came an invitation from my uncle who lived in California, saying that, would you like to come to the United States and study? I thought about it. I didn't know much about English, but I thought I would give it a try because it sounded so challenging. So I accepted the invitation and came to San Francisco and entered a business school in San Francisco called Hills Engineering College. And fortunately, because of self-studies I did after running into this skip, that I was able to understand lectures which contained enough contents in electronics. And somehow I managed to get good enough grades to advance to University of California, Berkeley, where I got bachelor's degree and master's degree and PhD. And when I finished studies, I was invited to teach at Berkeley, which I did for 1 year. Then I thought it would be a good idea to get some experience in industry. And I applied to Bell Laboratories, thank you. and I got accepted and joined the group which happened to be working on the control system for Project Telstar. And that is the third event of the three that really changed my life. Because, of course, I didn't know that much at that time, but Telstar was in fact one of the very memorable events, among the people who were engaged in telecommunications. Well, after I joined Bell Laboratories, I found myself in a group headed by a person named Young Norton. His name appears in some of the references in work on the Project Telstar. But he was heading up the group, small group, and in fact he was already pretty much more than halfway through in designing control system for Project Telstar. I was very fortunate that I joined this group because later I found myself sort of in charge of control system for Telstar antenna in Andover, Maine, that people spoke. Let me go back to my notes to make sure that I don't get off the line. When I joined the group, it was only 8 months to go for the launching of Telstar. So we still had some work left to make sure that it did work, in fact, when the event took place on July 10th of 1962 then. Now, The first few months after I joined the laboratories, I traveled back and forth between Andover, Maine and New Jersey to complete the design of the control system. And then, with about 1 month to go, I was moved to, in fact, Maine, so that I can be closer to the site and I can give a 24-hour attention to it if necessary. The Telstar, as you know, is, thank you, small. It's only 34 inches or so in diameter. And so the receiver and transmitters in a Telstar have to be small also in size and the light in weight. And the transmitting power of the Telstar was only 2 watts or so. And Telstar received the signal from the ground, then amplified it, and then rebroadcast down to the ground station. Because of the distance involved, and it could be as much as 3,000 nautical miles, or even more than that. It's shown there that the antenna on the ground have to have big gain. In fact, the gain that was required by design was 60 dB, 60 dB. And because it is 60 dB, the aperture of the antenna had to be also large, and it was 60 feet by 60 feet. Compared to the one that built at Homedale for Project Echo, which had only 20 feet by 20 feet aperture size. It was big, and it also weighed a lot of tons, and was very, I guess, the length was about 177 feet, and height was about 90 feet, and had to be moved accurately enough to be able to track the satellite with the tracking error down to 0.02 degrees. But that was a design requirement. And so prior to the date of the launching of the satellite, I spent many hours working on the system to make sure that this can be done. If I can have the photo number 3. Shown here are system of 3 antennas. The telemetry antenna on the far left, and the precision tracking antenna in the middle, and the big home antenna at the very right. Telemetry antenna, of course, has much wider beam width, and that was about 20 degrees. And precision antenna had the beam width of 2 degrees, and finally the home antenna had the beam width of only 0.2 of a degree. And in order to get the strong enough signal, that large antenna had to be placed or targeted on the satellite with the accuracy of 0.0 degrees. No, point, I'm sorry, 0.002 degrees. And that is what, that's what made it very challenging. Next, well, this shows how the three antennas interwork together. The first telemeter antenna, the helix antenna, working SHF frequency range, captures, first it captures the Telstar, and approximate position was handed over to the precision tracker, and then that was finally handed over to the big antenna with accuracy of perhaps 2/10 of a degree. And in order to make sure that if for some reason that the big antenna lost the position of the satellite, that was equipped with so-called auto-scan, the spiral scanning capability, which scanned around the expected satellite positions so that it could be broadcast on into the other side. Next, please. This shows the Andover main site. The under the big 11-story 11-story structure is the big antenna. And although you cannot really see in this picture, in the forefront, next to the building, to the left was the helix antenna for telemetry, and to the right was a precision tracker. Next one, please. And this one shows better what they look like. Center is the control center, and you see to the left precision tracker, and to the right helix antenna. Next one shows the, this is actually a model of the antenna, and it shows the entire structure of how it looks like. And next picture is the actual home antenna, and you get the idea of how big this antenna is or was by looking at the man standing in the middle of the picture. And you see a cabin at the end of the antenna where all the electronic equipment are installed. And that's where I spend hours and hours training the system. And in fact, I was there on July 10th when the historical phone call was made from Andover main site to Washington, D.C. The chairman of the AT&T speaking with Vice President Johnson. And I remember how tense I felt as I was standing there in front of the control panel to make sure nothing goes wrong. I was almost praying. Next one, please. This shows the actual test results. That particular figure shows the initial error of 0.11 degree in 20. And when it engaged into auto track mode, of course, it found the right position, and that took about 10 seconds, and well, I'm sorry, not 10 seconds, only 3 seconds, I guess, yeah, 3 seconds, and at the end, it was showing the arrow, perhaps 1/10 of the design figure of a 0.02. And the next figure, please. This is the actual the tracking data showing the, although you cannot see really the numbers, but it shows that the actual performance was better than the specification, and it was 0.002 degrees or better. And we are very proud of being able to control that monster antenna with this tracking accuracy. Next, please. This project involved a large number of people. In Bell Labs, there are about 800 people working on this project. And their work is documented in this 3-volume issue of Bell System Technical Journal. In some 114 authors and 1,200 pages. But those who are interested in learning more about this whole project can go to a very convenient and excellent book or the report. Can I see the next one too? Which happened to be authored by the president of your organization and his wife, Dave and Julia. And in not more than 50 or 60 pages, it gives a good summary and highlights of the entire project. And so if anyone is interested in more about what went on, can always go back to this reference. Now, in retrospect, Project Telstar was perhaps most memorable and also most publicized, I guess, the most publicized project I ever got myself into while I was working at Bell Labs for some 34 years. And I certainly was very happy that I got myself exposed to that project, and because of that, instead of returning to teaching after a year or two, after gaining industrial experience, I decided to stay on at the laboratories and spend the rest of the days. So, well, thank you very much for listening.
Okay, ask one
Any questions for Dr. Iwama?
Yeah. How many hours? You can repeat the question.
Yeah.
How many hours were you working per day or per week?
How many hours?
Yes.
I usually left probably after I moved to Maine. I probably spent 8 to 15 hours, depending on what was going on.
Right. 15 hours, good. Any questions? I think all probably Paul.
Explains everything.
I know that Arno was involved in this, but you showed very tight tracking
Yeah.
of that antenna. But as I remember, the structure was actually somewhat floppy. How far was the beam from where you thought it was?
Well, The antenna, of course, you are very familiar with at Homeville, was identical in shape with this Telstar antenna, but the difference is the size. And one that you're familiar with at Homeville has a 20 feet by 20 feet aperture. But the one that I worked on had 60 feet by 60 feet aperture. And so, yes, you're right. One of the concerns was the distortion during the tracking process. In control system design, we anticipated those disturbances and pre-compensated for possible deviation like that. That was one of the accomplishments.
Any question?
Yes, your recipe for longevity, please. Amazing.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Long time working.
I think the key is, or the answer is, enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, that's very good.
Absolutely.
I have a question, Dr. It's not well known that most typical parabolic dishes cannot slew very fast. That means they can't track moving satellites very fast. I wonder if you understood the nature of that challenge, and that's why you picked this particular design for the antenna.
I think that decision was made by my predecessor.
So fix this and make it work.
Jan Norton is the one that really should get credit for what happened. But
Thank you, sir.
I just, yeah.
Time for one last
Do we
question.
have one more question? Audience?
Thank you, Dr. Iwama. Appreciate it. Get 2 cents.
Dave, a little to your right.
You get them. Keep.
A little more.
We'll go.
A little more.
Keep going.
Okay, very good.
Don't fall off. Anytime you want to.
Okay.